In this podcast episode, host Sean Duffy converses with Daniel Priestley about the deep economic and social disruptions presently unfolding worldwide. They explore how current conditions mirror the historical Engels Pause, a period in the Industrial Revolution marked by rising productivity but stagnant or falling wages for workers, and how such disruptions have historically given rise to socialism and demands for reform. The discussion delves into causes behind growing inequality, the impact of technology, particularly AI, in reshaping economic power dynamics, and the challenges governments face in addressing these structural issues. They analyze the viability of different economic models, including the Nordic approach, scrutinize wealth redistribution, and discuss potential future pathways involving data sovereignty, sovereign wealth funds, and education reform. Daniel Priestley frames today's economic turmoil as a long-term disruption comparable to those that appear every 70 to 200 years, referencing the Industrial Revolution as the last major upheaval. He introduces the Engels Pause, a roughly 50-year period during early industrialization when economic productivity grew rapidly, but wages for the majority fell or remained stagnant. This was a time when mechanization devalued artisanal skills and empowered factory owners, industrialists, who amassed wealth. This growing inequality and worker disenfranchisement sowed the seeds for socialism and communism, as epitomized in the ideas of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. The end of the Engels Pause was marked by three revolutions that fundamentally reshaped society: a revolution in ownership, creating new asset classes and democratizing wealth; a revolution in skills, the inception of modern schooling aligned with industrial needs; and a political revolution that democratized power and gave workers representation. These revolutions facilitated wage growth and prosperity, but were often accompanied or preceded by violence, such as the French Revolution. In contrast, Britain saw more peaceful reforms like the Great Reform Act and the Chartist movement, which expanded suffrage and political engagement without bloodshed. The episode discusses modern economic inequality through the lens of a K-shaped economy, the idea that some people soar upward economically while others decline or stagnate. Daniel uses a marathon analogy where a small group gets bicycles technology, allowing them to finish far ahead, demonstrating how access to and understanding of technology now differentiate winners from losers in the economy. A key insight is that inequality is an output or scoreboard, not the cause itself. The root problems lie in structuronomic and technological factors. The fairness reflex, a deeply ingrained psychological and even primate behavior, causes people to react with anger and violence to perceived injustices, such as when they see others enjoying a disproportionate share of wealth or status while struggling themselves. Social media intensifies this sensitivity by unmasking lifestyles that were once hidden, amplifying jealousy and resentment. Crucially, inflation outpacing wage growth pushes many people below the cost of living, exacerbating discontent and creating dangerous societal tensions. While inequality can exist without unrest, when people lose ground in real terms, the risk of social upheaval rises. Priestley critiques simplistic calls to take money from billionaires and give it to the poor, explaining why such straightforward redistribution often fails. It addresses the symptom, inequality, but not the cause, structural economic mechanisms. Excessive taxation above a certain threshold, around 37 to 40%, motivates wealthy individuals to employ complex schemes, international maneuvers, and legal structures to avoid taxes, reducing the overall effectiveness of redistribution efforts. Governments face geographic constraints, while corporations and billionaires operate globally, exploiting tax haven jurisdictions such as Ireland and Luxembourg. This limits governments' reach and complicates wealth capture. The episode notes that breaking up monopolies and strategic monopolies could be more effective than punitive taxation, as monopoly power inhibits competition and harms consumers. Legislative efforts to dismantle conglomerates like Amazon into separate competitive parts are mentioned as a desirable, though politically difficult, measure. At the same time, increasing government power poses risks. Governments have a monopoly on legitimate violence and coercion, which historically have led to abuse and tyranny. Thus, replacing corporate monopolies with government monopolies risks greater harm, undermining individual freedoms and potentially resulting in oppressive regimes. Priestley emphasizes competition as foundational to capitalism and societal prosperity. Small businesses play a critical role because they foster competition, innovation, responsiveness, and opportunity. He notes that governments should favor small business by reducing regulatory burdens relative to large corporations, allowing entrepreneurs to thrive and challenge incumbents. Drawing on Adam Smith's ideas, he argues that as power consolidates in fewer hands, whether governments or corporations, the competitive dynamics deteriorate, harming consumers and workers alike. Ensuring a healthy ecosystem of competitors is essential for maintaining economic vitality and fairness. The discussion examines the Nordic countries, often cited as exemplars of socialism, and clarifies common misconceptions. Sweden, for example, underwent a socialist experiment marked by high taxes and expansive state services, but ultimately suffered from runaway inflation, bureaucratic inefficiency, and a decline in economic ranking. Nordic social policy centers not on redistributing wealth from rich to poor, but on time shifting, taxing citizens heavily during their peak earning years to provide extensive social support during childhood and retirement. This model, combined with cultural homogeneity, shared values, lifestyles, and trust, makes broad-based welfare viable. However, issues arise with increasing immigration and cultural differences, which challenge social cohesion and the we're all in this together ethos crucial for successful redistribution. The Nordic countries also have significant wealth inequality, with many billionaires per capita, demonstrating that wealth concentration persists even under extensive welfare states. Competence in government administration and societal values of hard work and mutual responsibility underpin their successes, but scaling such models to larger, more diverse countries remains problematic. Inflation, driven by deficit spending and money printing, erodes purchasing power and disproportionately harms the middle and lower classes who don't see wages keep pace with rising prices. Priestley highlights that wage stagnation relative to inflation is more destabilizing than inequality itself. He critiques distortions caused by unproductive spending incentivized by government policies, for example, subsidizing education in fields that do not meet labor market demands, or artificially propping up GDP via inefficient jobs, the metaphor of paying one person to dig a hole and another to fill it. Such distortions undermine productivity and contribute to economic malaise. Technology plays a dual role in current economic divides. It creates gigantic wealth for those who leverage it skillfully, often early adopters or those with specialized knowledge, while displacing or devaluing those with obsolete skills. Priestley recounts the historical Engels Pause analog, where new technologies like sewing machines displaced skilled tailors, leading to a 50-year decline in workers' conditions. In modern times, examples include the rise of gig economy jobs like Uber drivers replacing more skilled cab drivers, and traditional journalism being upended by digital content creators and social media influencers. The distribution of technological benefit tends to follow a power law, where a few individuals capture outsized rewards rather than a bell curve of even gains. This contributes to polarization in income and opportunity. Education systems historically trained workers for past industrial paradigms, but lag in adapting to new digital realities. Many people lack the skills to wield modern technology productively, deepening divisions between tech-savvy elites and others. Artificial intelligence looms as a disruptive force accelerating existing divides. Priestley predicts AI will catalyze a major economic on-ramp similar to the early stages of the Industrial Revolution, intensifying the gap between early adopters and laggards. This next phase threatens to reshape labor markets and value creation even more profoundly, potentially deepening the K-shaped economy and creating a new Engels Pause. The challenge is compounded by the speed of AI adoption and its deep integration into production, services, and culture. Attempts to address inequality through redistribution or universal basic income, UBI, face practical and theoretical limits. Direct money transfers risk fueling inflation if funded by money printing and may fail to stimulate meaningful economic improvement if not tied to productivity. Moreover, the global mobility of wealth owners and companies limits governments' ability to tax and regulate effectively. Wealth owners can shuffle assets internationally, complicating enforcement. Redistribution schemes risk provoking capital flight, stifling entrepreneurship, and encouraging efforts to circumvent the system. Without addressing systemic leverage structures, redistributive efforts can be counterproductive. Priestley proposes a radical reframing of data and digital infrastructure as common goods or public assets. As AI increasingly relies on vast datasets and computing power, the argument is made that citizens collectively own this data and therefore should share in its economic benefits. He envisions governments potentially owning or heavily taxing data centers and other critical digital infrastructure, leasing access to tech companies, a model akin to sovereign wealth funds or public utilities. This could provide a revenue base to support social welfare without resorting solely to direct taxation or money printing. This conception challenges traditional notions of property and ownership, suggesting new legal and economic frameworks will be required. Comparisons are made between Norway's highly successful sovereign wealth fund, funded by oil revenues, and less effective examples like Middle Eastern countries and Australia. Norway's model involves investing natural resource wealth for future generations, focusing on productivity and prudent governance. Priestley highlights the resource curse, which occurs when easy wealth disincentivizes productivity and leads to corruption or economic stagnation. Effective sovereign wealth funds must support long-term economic development, education, and skill building, rather than merely offering handouts. He also notes Australia's missed opportunities in failing to capture resource wealth effectively, reflecting poor political decisions rather than inevitable fate. Drawing on history, Priestley stresses the necessity for transformative changes in political systems, education, and ownership structures to address the new economic realities. Education must evolve to nurture creativity, collaboration, and technology fluency, recognizing diverse talents beyond traditional metrics. Schools should train children to identify their unique strengths and work effectively with others in digitally interconnected environments. Politically, reforms are needed to rebalance power structures, curb monopolies, and establish new forms of asset ownership and wealth distribution that reflect the digital economy. Without competence and shared cultural values, such reforms risk failure or unintended consequences. The episode concludes that the world is moving towards a bifurcation between a cutting-edge digital tech economy and a traditional industrial or service economy. National borders are becoming less relevant than alignment with these economic systems. Disconnection from the digital economy portends impoverishment regardless of location, while participation offers new opportunities beyond geographic constraints. This reality demands new governance, economic institutions, and societal norms that accommodate rapid technological change and shifting wealth dynamics. Daniel Priestley encourages an open mind about evolving paradigms, stressing that history's lessons on the Engels Pause, political reform, and education remain highly relevant as humanity faces a similar crossroads now.